The price of her father's mistake. Ziri sat alone in the cold metal room. Her eyes stared at the floor, but she wasn't really looking. Her mind was spinning. The voices of her family, the shouting, the decision, it was all still echoing inside her head. She was the daughter of High Trader Selrox, a respected name among the Cerelian race. But now that name meant nothing. Her father had made a bad deal with the humans. He borrowed resources from them, fuel, weapons, and protection. He promised to pay back. But the trade failed. His partners betrayed him. The humans asked for repayment, and when he had nothing left to give, he offered his daughter. "I am not a thing," Ziri had whispered, but no one heard. Her mother had cried. Her younger brother had looked away, and her father, he just signed the contract with shaking hands. The door opened with a soft hiss. A female guard stepped in. "Ziri, it is time. Prepare for transport. Your human groom awaits." Ziri did not speak. She stood slowly. Her hands were cold, her legs weak. But she walked. Every step felt heavy. Her long silver hair flowed behind her, and her blue skin glowed slightly in the dim light. She was beautiful, by her people's standards. But beauty did not matter now. She was just a trade. Two guards followed her silently as she walked through the corridor. The ship they entered was strange, built by humans. The air felt thick. The seats were square and dull. Everything smelled like metal and oil. There was no warmth. Ziri sat down and closed her eyes. She remembered her childhood, dancing in the crystal gardens, laughing with her mother, dreaming of love and freedom. Now those dreams were dead. The shuttle took off. She didn't look out the window. She didn't want to see the stars. After a few hours, the shuttle docked with a larger human vessel called the Wayfarer. It was massive, gray, strong and silent like a sleeping beast. Ziri followed the guards down a ramp and into the ship. The humans stared. Some whispered. She felt like she was being sold in a market. Finally, they reached a door. The guard pressed a button. The door slid open. "This is your chamber," the woman said. Ziri stepped in. The room was clean, simple. A soft bed, a small table, some food on a tray. But what caught her eye was the screen on the wall. It lit up with a message. "Welcome, Ziri. I am Captain Jalen Riker. I will meet you shortly. You are safe here." Safe? Ziri frowned. She didn't believe it. She sat on the bed, her heart still heavy. Minutes passed. Then the door opened again. And there he was. Captain Jalen Riker. A human male, tall and strong. He wore a dark uniform, but his face was calm. His eyes, dark, brown and kind, met hers. "I'm Jalen," he said softly. "I know you didn't choose this, neither did I, but I promise I won't hurt you." Ziri didn't answer. She just looked at him, waiting for the lie to come. But it didn't. "I asked for the contract to be changed," Jalen continued. "You don't belong to me. You are not a prisoner. If you want, you can leave this room any time. You can speak with your people. I will not force you to do anything." Ziri's lips parted slightly. This was not what she expected. She had prepared for cruelty, chains, or cold demands, but this man was speaking gently. "Why?" she asked quietly, her voice rough. Jalen gave a small smile. "Because no one should be treated like a trade item, not even in war, not even for peace." Ziri looked away. Her heart didn't trust him yet, but a small crack had opened in the wall she had built. "I will leave you now," he said. "Rest. If you need anything, press this button." He pointed to a small panel on the wall, then he left. Ziri sat in silence. Her eyes stayed on the door long after it closed. Later that night, she looked at her reflection in the mirror. Her cheeks were still wet from earlier tears, but now there were none. Something was changing. She touched her own hand. For the first time since the deal was made, she didn't feel like a prisoner. She felt seen. and that scared her more than anything else. The human groom Ziri was used to silence, but the silence of this human ship felt different. It wasn't the silence of peace. It was the silence before something unknown, something dangerous. She sat by the round window, staring into space. Stars floated like cold diamonds, but they gave her no comfort. Every time she thought about the word groom, her stomach twisted. Then the door chimed. She turned quickly, her breath caught in her throat. She expected guards, maybe a translator, maybe even a contract officer. Instead, it was him. A tall figure entered the room. His boots were silent on the floor. His hair was messy, like he didn't care for fancy things. His face was clean but not soft, marked by past battles and long missions. But what shocked her most was the small smile on his face. "Hello," he said. Ziri stood up. Her eyes narrowed. He paused, then gently said, "I'm Jalen Riker, captain of this ship, and your supposed groom." He looked uncomfortable saying that last word. Ziri didn't move. She didn't trust the calm tone in his voice. Her people had taught her humans were unpredictable, brutal, tricksters, always polite before they took what they wanted. Jalen seemed to sense her fear. "I know how this must look to you," he said, "and you're right to feel angry. This arrangement is wrong. You were given away like a gift. I don't accept that." Ziri blinked. "Then why accept the marriage?" He let out a slow breath. "Because if I refused, your family's punishment would be worse. I was told if I accepted the deal, the debt would be canceled and your people would be spared. That's the only reason I agreed." She watched him closely. Was that true? Or was he playing the long game, waiting for her to let down her guard? "You don't have to see me as anything," Jalen continued. "Not a husband, not a master, not even a friend." He pulled out a small bag and placed it on the table. "What is that?" Ziri asked. "Fruit," he said. "From Earth. It's called an apple. Red ones are sweet. Thought you might like to try one." Ziri didn't move. Jalen smiled again, just a little. "All right, I'll leave you alone. But I meant what I said. You are not my property. You're a guest here. No one will touch you. Not unless you want them to." He walked to the door, then paused. "There's a music console on the wall. You can play any song, Earth music, or recordings from your people's archive. I asked my AI to add them." He left. The door closed with a soft hiss. Ziri stood frozen. A few minutes passed. She walked to the table. The apple looked strange, smooth, and red, like a polished stone. She had never tasted Earth food before. She picked it up carefully and took a small bite. It was sweet, juicy. She hated that it was delicious. Why was this human being so kind? She didn't want kindness. She wanted a reason to hate him. Hours later, she heard a knock. She expected another soft speech, maybe more gifts. But instead, she saw something different. Jalen stood there holding something glowing. A tiny cube, blue energy flickering inside. "I found this in the archives," he said. "A Cerellian memory cube. I thought you might want it." Ziri gasped. "That's my mother's voice, our sacred songs." Jalen nodded. "I figured it might bring you some comfort. I can leave it here." He placed the cube gently beside the apple, then turned again to go. But this time Ziri said something. "Why are you doing this?" Jalen didn't turn. He just answered with a calm voice. "Because I believe in making things right. And this marriage, this whole situation, was wrong from the start. But maybe we can make something good from it." Ziri said nothing. But after he left, she didn't return to her bed. Instead, she sat on the floor with the apple in one hand and the memory cube in the other. For the first time since her life changed, she didn't feel like crying. She felt confused. And somewhere, deep inside that confusion, was the beginning of curiosity. Behind her eyes, the room was dark, but Ziri didn't sleep. She sat curled in the corner, the small blue memory cube glowing in her hands. Her fingers trembled as the ancient songs of her people played softly in the background. Songs sung by mothers to their daughters for centuries. But for Ziri, the voices only brought more pain. She remembered her mother's voice. Gentle, warm, always humming. But the last time she had heard it, her mother was whispering, "Be brave, my little star. Even in darkness, find your light." That was before they handed her over. Now the darkness wasn't just around her, it was inside her. A soft knock came from the door. Not loud, not demanding, just respectful. She didn't answer. The door didn't open. But a voice came through, calm and quiet. "I'm not here to talk, just to leave something outside." Ziri listened, frozen. "Your people left a box of your things with our crew. Thought you might want it. It's just a few clothes, jewelry, maybe something that feels like home." Then silence. She crept to the door after he left and opened it just enough to pull the small case inside. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was her mother's bracelet, a simple woven silver band with glowing beads that shifted color with mood. She slid it on her wrist. It turned soft blue. Sadness. She pressed her eyes shut. Later that night, she couldn't hold the thoughts back anymore. She pressed the communication panel and whispered, "Captain Riker." There was no reply at first. Then the screen lit up. "Ziri," he said, surprised. "Can I ask something?" "Anything." She looked down, ashamed to even ask. "What do humans do when they are broken inside?" There was silence on the other end. Then his voice, softer than ever. "We try to find pieces worth holding on to." Ziri stared at the screen. The next day, she opened her door for the first time. Jalen was standing outside, drinking something from a metal cup. His eyes widened when he saw her. "I didn't expect," he started but stopped himself. "Welcome." Ziri didn't say anything. She just stepped out. For the first time, she wanted to see this human ship not as a prison, but as a place where she could breathe. He offered her a tour. She didn't say yes. But she walked beside him. They passed rooms filled with blinking lights and floating tech. The crew members looked her way, but no one spoke cruelly. No one stared too long. One human female even nodded at her kindly. In the observation deck, Jalen stopped. "You might like this," he said. The windows showed a stunning view. Stars swirling, colors shifting like a painting of light and dust. A small moon turned slowly near a pink gas planet. Ziri stared, eyes wide. "It's called Elun's Halo," he said. "Named after a myth, about a woman who hid her tears in the stars." Ziri turned slowly toward him. "Why would she do that?" "So no one would see her pain." Ziri's voice cracked. "Did anyone ever find them?" Jalen looked at her. "One man did. He held them in his hands and promised to protect them." She didn't speak, but something behind her eyes shimmered. That night, she didn't cry. She placed her mother's bracelet on the table, along with the glowing cube. Then, for the first time, she looked in the mirror and saw something new. Her face still looked
tired. Her eyes still held pain, but her shoulders weren't so heavy. And her heart
wasn't completely cold. A part of her, a very small part, wondered, what if this human wasn't like the others? What if the universe had not stolen her future, but simply changed its path? A night under alien stars. The storm came out of nowhere. 1 second, their diplomatic shuttle was flying smoothly across the calm skies of a moon called Varus 9. The next, alarms screamed, the sky turned black, and their ship spiraled down through thick clouds. Ziri's hands gripped the yaw seat. Her heart pounded like drums in her chest. "Hold on!" Jalen shouted from the cockpit. The crash wasn't violent, but it was sudden. The shuttle skidded across rocky ground and slammed against a ridge. Sparks flew, smoke hissed, then silence. Ziri coughed as the dust settled. She looked around. The back of the ship was dented. Lights flickered. The controls were dead. "Captain," she called out. "I'm okay." Jalen groaned. He stood slowly, wiping blood from his forehead. "Are you hurt?" "No." He gave a small breath of relief. "We're grounded. Communications are jammed. We'll have to wait until sunrise to call for help." Ziri glanced at the window. Night had already fallen. The outside world was cold and silent. They stepped out of the shuttle together. The sky above them shimmered with green clouds and 3 glowing moons. The air was thin, the wind sharp like knives. Ziri wrapped her arms around herself. Jalen handed her a thermal coat. "Here, this'll keep you warm." She hesitated, then took it. Their hands touched for a moment. It was the first time she didn't pull away. They found a small cave nearby. It wasn't much, just a hollow space in the rocks, but it offered shelter from the wind. Jalen lit a small camp light. The soft glow filled the cave, casting long shadows. Ziri sat down slowly. "Do your missions always end like this?" Jalen laughed. "Only the ones that matter." She smirked, just a little. Hours passed. They sat across from each other, sharing quiet silence. Jalen gave her a protein bar. She tasted it and wrinkled her nose. "It's awful," she said. "Now you know why humans don't smile after meals in space." That made her laugh softly. It surprised them both. After a while, Ziri looked at him and asked, "Why aren't you angry?" "About what?" "Being forced into a political marriage? Getting stuck with a stranger?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Because I see a person sitting across from me, not a burden." Ziri's voice was barely a whisper. "Even if that person was forced to be here?" Jalen looked at her seriously. "Even more reason to show them kindness." She looked down. "Back home," she said, "I was never enough. Not strong, not clever, just a daughter, easy to give away." He leaned forward. "You were never easy to give away. They just didn't see your worth. That's their failure, not yours." Ziri's hands trembled slightly. She didn't know what to say. She felt like crying, but no tears came, only warmth. Later that night, the temperature dropped fast. Ziri began to shiver. The coat helped, but the cave was too open. The winds outside howled like ghosts. Jalen noticed. "You're freezing." "I'm fine," she lied. "No, you're not." He unzipped his own jacket and sat beside her. "We need to share body heat. I won't touch you if you don't want me to." She hesitated, then slowly, she nodded. He wrapped his arm around her shoulders. She leaned against him, stiff at first. But then something surprising happened. She relaxed. For the first time in days, maybe years, she didn't feel afraid of another person's touch. She felt safe. They sat in silence, her head resting on his chest, his coat around them both. Outside, the moons rose higher. The alien stars blinked softly above the clouds. Inside the cave, 2 strangers shared warmth, not as husband and wife, but as 2 broken souls learning how to heal. As she drifted to sleep, Ziri whispered something she hadn't said in years. "Thank you." Jalen didn't reply right away. He just whispered back, "You're not alone anymore." The choice. The halls of the High Cerelian Embassy were cold, too cold even for Ziri. Her boots echoed on the smooth crystal floor as she walked beside Captain Jalen Riker. She was dressed in ceremonial robes, loose flowing silver with glowing threads. Her hair was brushed back, her face calm, but inside her chest, a storm raged. Today was the day. The council would speak, and Ziri would finally have a choice. For weeks now, she had lived aboard the Wayfarer. Jalen had shown her nothing but kindness. He never forced her to act like a wife. He never touched her without permission. He had given her silence when she needed it. and company when she felt alone. And now, she was free to leave him completely. As they entered the chamber, all eyes turned to her, nobles, diplomats, her father. Even the royal scribe was here to record her answer. The High Council speaker, an old Cerelian with sharp eyes, rose. "Ziri of House Selrox," he said, voice echoing. "Your father's debt has been erased. The human has fulfilled his part of the contract. You may now walk away from this arrangement, free with full status returned to your name." Ziri looked at her father. He did not meet her eyes. Then she looked at Jalen. He stood quietly, straight-backed, calm. He didn't smile. He didn't beg. He had told her before they arrived, "Whatever you choose, I'll accept it." She stepped forward. Everyone leaned in. "I am grateful," Ziri began, her voice clear, "for this offer, for my restored name, for the council's fairness." Pause. Silence. Not a breath stirred. She took a deep breath. "But I will not leave him." Gasps filled the room. Her father's jaw dropped. A noble's cup clattered to the ground. The speaker blinked twice. "I choose to stay with Captain Jalen Riker," she said, louder, stronger now. "Not because I was forced, not because I was traded, but because he treated me like a person, and because in his ship I found something I never had in my own home: freedom and safety." Her voice cracked just a little. "He gave me the right to walk away, and that is why I choose to stay." The chamber burst into whispers. Jalen looked stunned. His eyes softened, but he didn't speak. He didn't want to ruin the moment. The council speaker cleared his throat. "Do you understand what this means, Ziri? You choose to remain bonded to a human, as wife, by your own will?" Ziri stepped closer to Jalen, standing beside him now. "Yes, not by force, but by heart." Another pause. The old speaker finally nodded. "Then let it be known across the galaxy. The contract is fulfilled, and by her own voice the bond shall remain." Outside the chamber, Ziri and Jalen walked quietly. "Why did you do that?" Jalen asked softly. Ziri looked up at him, calm, but serious. "Because you saw me when no one else did. Because when I was shattered, you didn't try to fix me. You just stayed close." He stopped walking. Their eyes met. "You don't have to be anything for me," he said. "You still have your life, your dreams," she smiled. "Maybe I'll build new dreams. Ones that start with trust and maybe one day something more." Jalen reached out and gently took her hand. It wasn't forced. It wasn't part of a contract. It was her choice. And in that one touch, everything changed. The attack. The stars were calm, but danger was already inside the ship. Ziri stood in the garden chamber aboard the Wayfarer, gently touching the petals of an earth rose Jalen had grown just for her. The petals were soft. The scent was sweet. She smiled. This ship had become a strange kind of home. But peace has enemies, and some couldn't stand what she had chosen. Down in the lower decks, hidden behind maintenance tunnels, 3 masked figures moved like shadows, mercenaries, not human, not Cerelian. They wore armor with no crest, ghosts for hire. They weren't here for sabotage. They were here for blood. Target confirmed. One of them whispered, "Kill the human captain. Take the girl alive." Jalen was in the training hall, running, through old martial drills when the alert blared through the walls. "Breach detected. Sector 4. He dropped his training stick instantly. His mind raced. Sector 4 was near Ziri's chamber. He ran. Ziri didn't understand the alarm at first. She tapped her communicator. "Captain?" No response. Suddenly, boom. The door to the garden exploded in sparks. She screamed as smoke poured in. 3 figures emerged through the haze. One aimed a pulse cannon at her. But before the shot fired, Jalen crashed into the first attacker from behind like a meteor. "Run!" he shouted to her. She didn't. Instead, she grabbed the nearest pipe and swung it hard into a second attacker's leg. He grunted and stumbled. Jalen fought two of them. He was fast, years of training showing in every move. But they were brutal, and they didn't fight fair. The third attacker turned to Ziri. He reached out. "You're coming with us." She backed away. "I'm not yours." "You were bought. And now someone wants you back." Before he could grab her, Ziri did something she never imagined she could. She activated her bracelet. The glowing beads burst with energy, ancestral tech known only to Cerelian nobles. A wave of blinding blue light shot out, knocking him to the floor. Jalen turned, panting. Blood dripped from his lip. One attacker lay still. Another groaned in the corner. He looked at Ziri. She stood tall, breath shaking, eyes blazing. "You're full of surprises," he said. "You taught me how to fight fear," she replied. The remaining mercenary pulled a detonator from his belt. Jalen saw it too late. "No!" Ziri dove in front of Jalen as the device exploded with a blinding flash. It wasn't deadly, but the pulse knocked them both into the wall. Ziri collapsed, coughing. Security arrived seconds later. The attackers were stunned and captured. Later, in the medical bay, Jalen opened his eyes. He was bandaged, dizzy, but alive. And Ziri was beside him holding his hand. "You jumped in front of me," he whispered. "You would have done the same," she said softly. "Why?" Ziri leaned closer. "Because you're not just a captain anymore, you're mine. Not by bond, not by deal, but by heart." He smiled, weak, but full of light. "You saved me." She smirked. "Told you I wasn't helpless." But the truth. Behind the attack came hours later. The mercenaries were hired by nobles, powerful ones who were furious that a noble Cerelian girl had chosen a human. Ziri's choice had threatened centuries of order. To them, her bond was shameful, a stain that had to be erased. Ziri stood before the Ambassador Council again, this time not with fear, but fire. "If anyone lays a hand on him again," she said coldly, "they will learn what a Cerelian daughter really is." And no one dared answer her. That night, she sat beside Jalen, resting her head on his shoulder. "Does it ever stop?" she asked. "The fear?" He looked up at the stars. "No. But sometimes, someone makes it worth facing." Ziri looked up too, and in the stars, she no longer saw a cage. She saw a future, her smile at the altar. The great hall of the Celestial Union was silent. Thousands gathered under the sky dome, stars above, glowing crystal pillars below. Alien leaders, nobles, officers, even rival species filled the space. Everyone had come to witness the strange, beautiful moment they never expected. A wedding, but not just any wedding. A Cerelian noble daughter, marrying a human. Ziri stood in front of the mirror. She wore a gown unlike anything her people had ever seen, woven from her mother's ceremonial threads, but trimmed with human cloth. It shimmered with soft silver light and soft blue crystal, lace. But it wasn't the dress that made her shine. It was the peace in her eyes. The girl who once cried in silence now looked at herself without fear. She didn't see a gift, or a trade, or a daughter sold off. She saw a woman who made her own choice. On the other side of the hall, Jalen stood near the altar. His uniform was freshly pressed, metals polished, but he barely noticed any of it. He kept adjusting his sleeves, trying to stay calm. He had faced wars, led troops, fought in ambushes. But nothing made his heart race like the thought of seeing her walk down that aisle. The music began. Soft, echoing notes from both Cerelian, flutes and human strings, two cultures blending into one sound. Then, she appeared. Ziri walked slowly, proudly. No chains, no shame, no fear. Gasps rippled through the hall. Her father looked down, unable to meet her gaze. Her mother, seated far in the back, had tears running freely down her cheeks, but Ziri didn't look at them. She looked only at Jalen, and she smiled, a real smile, one that reached her soul. When she reached the altar, Jalen gently offered his hand. She took it without hesitation. The high priest of the Union stood before them. By the ancient rights of both Earth and Cerelia, and by the will of free hearts, we gather to witness this bond, not of bloodlines or contracts, but of trust. He looked at Ziri. Do you, Ziri, accept this man, not as part of a deal, but by your own choice? She looked into Jalen's eyes. I do, because when I was lost, he waited. When I was broken, he listened. And when I wanted to run, he stayed. I choose him. Then the priest turned to Jalen. And you, Captain Riker? I do, Jalen said, voice strong. Because I never wanted a bride. I only wanted her to be free. But in her freedom, she chose me. And that means everything, the priest smiled. Then let the stars be your witnesses. You are joined in union by your own hearts, not by tradition. The crowd stood in silent respect, and then together Ziri and Jalen stepped forward to ring the union bell, a custom from both of their people, symbolizing new beginnings. The sound echoed across the hall like a song of hope. Later that night, under the soft sky dome, they danced, not as captain and passenger, not as human and alien, but as two people who had survived everything the galaxy threw at them, and still chose each other. At one point, Jalen looked at her and asked, Do you regret anything? Ziri smiled up at him. Only that I didn't meet you before the pain. But maybe I needed the pain to find someone who would never cause it again. He gently pulled her closer. No more pain, he whispered. Only peace and love. And as the stars moved slowly above, their story ended, not with a rescue or a fight or a bargain, but with a smile that changed both of their lives forever.